So really quick, and no offense to the person who replied, I encourage people who disagree with me to reply. I like debating. When I have the new podcast we're going to be launching, I'm going to invite on as many guests as I can who have opposing viewpoints. I like when somebody convinces me that I was wrong. I like when someone educates me about something I don't know, I might be ignorant about. And I take pride in my objectivity, right, and my open-mindedness. So I don't mean to hate on you. I'm just responding this way because I can get a lot more in on a quick video talking about this because it's an important subject. I've seen a lot of people say this. It seems like people who are, left-leaning politically, who obsess over gun control, not only do they not understand anything about guns or gun control, but it's something they fixate on almost obsessively so. So they don't want to talk about actual solutions, right? So the solution to having a soft target is to harden that target. You can't get into a government building unless you go through pretty much the same things that I'm suggesting for schools. You can't get into a sporting event unless you go through various security lines and pat-downs or metal detectors. They check your bag, and they have other technologies they employ, right? So there are plenty of solutions to make that a much harder target. I'm not saying that because I'm afraid to talk about gun control. I have no problem talking about gun control. This person said the idea of air marshals, because I said we should have school marshals where you have tactically trained, specially trained teachers, janitors, anybody who works in the school on a daily basis can sign up, they get a pay bump, they get all this training, and they carry weapons in school. Now, some people have said, well, the whole good guy with a gun is the best defense against a bad guy with a gun. Doesn't mean anything anymore because the cops didn't do anything in Texas, and in Parkland, the cop stayed outside. He was too afraid to go inside and save the kids. He was a coward. So obviously a good guy with a gun doesn't help a bad guy with a gun. All right, literally 24 hours ago, a woman stopped somebody who opened up fire on a group of people outside of a party using an AR-15. She had a pistol. She responded. She shot him, took him down, and killed the shooter before anybody was injured. Every single day, there are thousands of instances where people stop crimes from happening because they have a gun. So to suggest, my analogy was saying that, oh, well, these cops failed, so a good guy with a gun doesn't help. That's like saying, well, the safety features in my car failed. My anti-lock brakes failed, so anti-lock brakes are useless. They shouldn't even be in cars. Let's stop putting Let's stop putting anti-lock brakes in cars, because there was that one time that one car, the anti-lock brakes didn't work and the guy got into a bad accident and died. So it's pretty much like they're useless. That makes no sense, right? Obviously, most of the time, if there's somebody who's an active shooter, the police are equipped with guns and they're going to take that shooter out almost every time. Sometimes it doesn't happen, and that's tragic and horrible and needs to be investigated and needs to be rectified. So we need alternative solutions, one of which is having people with weapons inside the school, which can be done with my school marshal program that I'm proposing, much like we had with the air marshals after September 11th. He also said, well, the air marshals didn't do anything to stop the next terrorist attack. It was having a locked cockpit door. No, the shoe bomber, the underwear bomber, people getting in fights and conflicts and stabbings on planes, attempted hijackings didn't stop the next 9/11. The reason why those events were stopped was because of the air marshal program. Nobody's gotten into a cockpit because of the locked cockpit doors, so there hasn't necessarily been a hijacking, but there have been less violent incidents on planes because of the air marshal program. Having people in the school with weapons who are trained to use them in specific situations could be an incredible asset. In addition to that, there are other technological applications like I talked about in my original video. I encourage you to watch it. But this one guy citing this example is absurd. So just to give you, just when you say I'm afraid to talk about what actually matters, gun control. Let's say right now you banned AR-15s. You can't buy AR-15s anymore. All right, there's 400 million guns in the country. That's number one. You're not getting rid of all of those guns. It's not going to happen. So let's say the next shooter wants to go and shoot up a school, but he can no longer buy an AR-15. Can he buy a pistol? Can he buy a shotgun? You realize that he could have done just as much damage, if not more, with a shotgun. You can get a semi-automatic shotgun that accepts a magazine. You can custom build via 3D printer your own high-capacity shotgun shell magazine. You could do a 410 shotgun, a semi-automatic 410 shotgun that shoots half ounce to 1 ounce, depending on the gauge, lead slugs. Pretty much bigger than a .50 caliber. Right? And you can shoot those as quickly as you can pull the trigger because it's a semi-automatic shotgun. You could also use buckshot, which is going to shoot anywhere from a handful to as many as 20 individual 38 caliber, just like a 38 pistol, 38 caliber ball bearings will be shot out of that gun. So you can do a tremendous amount of damage with a semi-automatic shotgun with a large capacity magazine. Even if you didn't, even if you had a standard capacity magazine and a shotgun, I have a tactical shotgun that can take 10 rounds. So that's 10 rounds before you have to reload again. With 10 rounds, you could do a hell of a lot of carnage. So to suggest that it's semi-automatic rifles, not to mention the fact, if we ban the AR-15, there's about 100 other platforms that use different systems, whether it's piston-driven or gas-driven, whether it's a bullpup, whether it's a long barrel or short barrel. Then you have pistol classes that use stabilizer braces and says that they're not necessarily even considered rifles. Then you have SBRs, which require a special tax stamp. There are a ton of different weapons that can accomplish the same thing. Saying the AR-15 needs to be banned means absolutely nothing. It is meaningless. If you suggest it, you don't know anything about firearms, and you shouldn't be talking about this situation. If you're a parent with children and you're genuinely worried, talk to somebody who can educate you. I would be more than happy to talk to any of you and help you understand. Feel free to respond to this with questions if you don't understand how firearms work, if you don't understand why banning an AR-15 wouldn't help. Say you were to ban all guns, right? There's no more guns in the United States anymore. Well, there's still 400 million guns out there, right? Look at the UK. I bet a lot of people out there who support gun control think that Australia and the United Kingdom banned guns. They didn't. You can get an AR-15 in the UK. You can get an AR-15 in Australia. Did any of you actually know that? The only difference is you can only go up to a 22 caliber. So you can't shoot long range, and you're not going to be hitting targets that are, 100, 300, 500 yards away. But if you were to walk into a school and start spraying 22 caliber long rifle rounds at children, you're going to cause just as much terror and damage as you would with an AR-15 using 5.56 millimeter or 223 caliber ammunition. You don't understand these things, and you're talking about them as if you do. If you think that universal background checks are the answer, I'll tell you something. Every time you buy a gun, you're doing a background check through the FBI. The only workaround, the only time there's a workaround is if it's a private sale. If somebody is not actually a firearms dealer and they're selling a gun privately to another person, they don't have to do a background check. And maybe that's something that you feel like is a big issue. It's generally not, because there aren't that many crimes committed because of that issue. But there's also a big problem with requiring background checks in those sales, which is it's unenforceable. There's no way to know who has what gun, so there's no way to track whether or not a background check was necessary but not completed, That means there has to be a gun registry, or it's completely unenforceable. And the second you have a gun registry, now you have the federal government keeping a record of what personal property every single person has. And there's a big problem with that if you're worried about a potential confiscation program down the road. So there are issues with gun control measures that a lot of these people are proposing, and most of them come down to the fact that they don't understand the first thing about the objects they are trying to legislate. Hopefully that clarifies. Please don't talk about, the good guy with a gun stops a bad guy with a gun is no longer an argument, because in these one or two examples, there was a good guy with a gun that didn't do anything. That's absurd. Refer back to my anti-lock brake analogy, because I feel like that's pretty relevant and helpful to understand how absurd of an argument that is. I appreciate you disagreeing with me in the comments. I know I get worked up when I'm talking. I'm not yelling at you. I'm not mad at you. I don't think you're stupid or anything like that. I really genuinely appreciate you engaging with me and sharing your point of view. I hope and encourage you to do so in the future. Thanks.